Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Nihat Guvercin, the CEO of iLearn Schools, educating over 6,000 K-12 students, and Jason Gulya, a professor of English and Applied Media at Berkeley College, as well as an AI consultant to colleges.
My name is Jason Gulya. I'm a professor of English and Applied Media at Berkeley College. So we have campuses in New Jersey and New York. And basically, I'm in a classroom. I work with college students and I'm constantly experimenting with AI, especially as a way to figure out how to teach reading and writing. And then increasingly, I work with colleges and universities to try to figure out what a good strategy is and how to encourage experimentation with these technologies in a way that actually helps students learn and actually helps us to level up how we teach and how we connect with our students.
Great. Nihat?
Hi, everyone. This is Nihat Guvercin. I am the Chief Executive Officer for iLearn Schools. Well, we are a school system servicing public school students across Passaic County, Bergen County, Hudson County, as well as Bronx in New York. My involvement with AI is actually starting all the way from my graduation from Middle East Technical University with physics degree. I always find something interesting in technology, and I always try to keep my hands in the technology. And AI is a very exciting topic, which I believe in the future will make a huge difference in everything, including education. And I'm super excited.
Great. Thanks for joining us. And let's dive right into it then. So let's talk about AI. Jason, why don't you do it from the college level? Tell us sort of where we're at right now. It's 1.5 years, 2.5 years. I can't remember how far since ChatGPT, but tell us, give us some sort of history and then where we're at now.
Yeah, one of the things that I'll sort of front load with is that college students, so typically my students are 18 to 24, and then I have many students who are outside of that range, but most of them are power users of this technology and have been for a while. So it's not uncommon to go into one of our classrooms and have 80% of students, maybe even more, already using this technology. And they have been for a while. One of the things that I think is so interesting about colleges and what we work with on a daily basis is that many of our students were using this technology really after it had been out for a couple of months. So after ChatGPT came out in November 2022, a lot of our students within a couple of months, they were using it. And one of the things that's so interesting, and it happened again, basically when we go into the summer months, there's a big dip in ChatGPT usership. And a lot of that is us, right? A lot of that is college students who are using this technology to learn things and write things for better or worse. And I think that's one of the things that myself and colleges in general are trying to address, right? Trying to figure out how, given that context, and that context has really been in place probably for about a year, right? When we've had about 80% of our students probably using this technology, and trying to figure out how we can now create these principles of using this technology responsibly. And that's where we've been a little bit behind. I think that even right now, far more college students are using this technology than professors and faculty and administrators are using this technology. I think that's the gap that really is really huge right now. And so a lot of what I try to help professors and faculty and even administrators do is try to figure out how to use this technology enough that you start to understand it and can then create policies around that understanding. Because we've been playing catch up. And we've been playing catch up basically ever since ChatGPT came out. And I don't think we haven't closed that gap nearly enough. But that's kind of where we are. And I think that now we're at that point where really two things have changed over the last couple of years at the college level. So I think that there's this growing recognition that technology is not going away. When ChatGPT came out, I think for the first year, the vast majority of people in the higher ed space thought it was going to die. They thought generative AI was not going to be a big thing in 2 years. They thought, no way, it's a fad, it's a shiny thing, it'll go away. I think that has sort of died down as an idea. And I think this is a growing recognition that it's going to remain powerful, right? It's going to remain impactful. And then we just have to wait and see what that impact is going to be. And then the other thing that has changed is that I think that colleges and universities are now starting to understand that we need a strategy. We need a way to deal with this, right? There's all these questions about how it should be used, right? The first impulse for a lot of colleges was to quote unquote ban the technology. And one of the things that I tell a lot of people is that it's actually not possible to ban it at the college level, certainly. All you can do is issue a gag rule, right? That you can only say that students cannot talk about it. And that's very destructive for me. And I think that now colleges are starting to move in the direction of actually coming up with a purposeful strategy. And that's where I think a lot of us will be in the fall. So that kind of, I think, catches you up in terms of what has happened, what I think has changed over the last year and a half or so.
That is a great overview. Now, are there guidelines yet for schools that they can look to as far as, some type of template?
There are, but I'll also say that the vast majority of colleges are building it now. So the first move for us, as with a lot of colleges and universities, when more and more students were using this technology, was to hand power over to the professors. And that is a good and a bad thing, right? That was extremely overwhelming, but gave a lot of autonomy to the individual classrooms and students and professors because they could build policies as they went along. And that was really the standard and has been the standard since ChatGPT came out. Now, and my college is starting to do this, for a lot of us, there's now this wholesale process of trying to figure out a college-wide strategy. We don't have one yet. I think some colleges have them, but they're kind of in the minority. And then most of us are kind of building as we go along now that we've learned a little bit more about the technology, how students are using it, how professors and administrators are using it, but we're building it from the ground up now and trying to figure out as we do that, how to create a college-wide policy that isn't automatically going to be behind. One of the real struggles with this technology is it's changing so quickly and evolving so quickly, trying to figure out how to come up with a policy that is going to make sense in 6 months or a year or 2 years. And that's the challenge I think a lot of us are dealing with right now.
Yeah, 100%. So few. I think it's like probably 1%. I mean, I know I advise university presidents and they're just stuck. They're stuck, right? And it's so hard because there's so many factors, right? It's not only for the students, but the faculty who, they change very, 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 very slowly.
Yeah, and so much
And
of it has been, and again, I think this is a good thing and a bad thing, giving power to professors, students who are, faculty members who are student facing. And I think that in many ways that was a good way. But now I think now that we've been around this technology for a while and we recognize how heated conversations can get. Because one of the things that really didn't happen with a lot of colleges and universities is if we think a student, quote unquote, cheated. I can talk more about what that means. There are so many different ways of approaching it. But say a student didn't use this technology responsibly, whatever that looked like, and then a faculty member accuses them of it, and it gets to the appeals process, there's no support system. There's nothing. It ends up being professor and student yelling at each other, right? More often than not, it gets overturned because AI detectors do not work very well at all, certainly not well enough for that context. And then professor and professor and student go off and they hate each other, right? That connection is broken. And so I think there's this recognition that with things like that, there needs to be some sort of college-wide policy, not to really just protect professor or anything like that, but to basically create these standards and to make sure that no one is being, dismissed in any way.
for sure. All right, Nihat, how about at the K-12 level?
Well, there are lots of similarities actually, and that was very insightful, by the way, Jason. And I do also teach at the college level too at Bergen Community College, so I can definitely rely and connect with so many things that you said. So I guess there are two major areas of AI that can be really impactful in every sector, including education as well. One, AI is a wonderful tool to improve the productivity of self, anyone. It could be an administrator, it could be a teacher. Anyone can really benefit using AI to improve the productivity. It's a super powerful tool. But on the other hand, AI could be a very, very strong tool in education itself to enrich the instructional quality or helping students to learn better. One thing that I know about education, being in education for so many years, education is a very resistive sector. So it does not really adapt to change easily, quickly. especially instructors and educators. We love what we believe is working. And when there is a new change come, we sort of like resist to adapt it quickly. And AI is no different. Unfortunately, the power of AI is so strong, but the resistance is still strong. And some challenges that I see, especially in the field, the ethical conversation about the use of AI, whether it's right to use or wrong to use, and how to use, what exactly is the procedure to follow. There are lots of ambiguities and lots of unclear points, which basically is the reason some of our educators are reluctant and they don't want to touch it. There are some using it with not clear and transparent conversation. And I guess that is one of the major challenge of using an AI in all sectors right now, not being transparent in terms of how you or individually you make use of the AI, and not being transparent what you expect your students to make use of the AI. So in this ambiguity, in this not clear picture, everyone is touching and doing something, but it's not really obvious and clear who is doing what. So I guess this is also coming because of not really having clear guidelines and guidance, which school districts are not really prepared for this. It's a very rapidly developing technology. It impacts every sector and it just changes so fast. Just like Jason said, one thing that you know today could be definitely invalid 2 weeks from now because the technology is so impressive and accelerating at a speed which basically we cannot really catch up with. We are trying to digest. In the K-12 school system, K-12 in general, I believe there is lack of understanding of the true power of this. And there is even a misunderstanding yet that this can be stopped and this should be definitely prevented getting in the hands of the students. Unfortunately, the genie is out of the box already. So we can't really talk, and I believe we should not really even entertain the conversation of banning or getting these devices or technology out of our campuses. It is already there. The question should be about what to do and how to really fully benefit from this amazing, impressive technology to help our students learn better and to also help our instructors become better. But there is so much to do and very similar challenges like K-12 and higher education. How to detect the work that is done by the AI and done by the student. What policy and procedures to follow implementing AI in the classroom, and what really to allow, what not to allow. These are so many questions that is not really clear to the administrators, yet alone to the instructors. So we are sort of like tackling all these problems and try to find a way to help support our instructors, especially before we get started to new school year, so that they have some tools and guidelines to implement this technology to help our students learn better.
Nihat, let me just ask you about how your instructors are leveraging it most effectively so far. What have you seen?
Well, quite frankly, especially our AI use last year was more towards improving the productivity of individuals, administrators, and staff members in general. So just it was more about understanding what really these tools are about, the custom GPTs, and being able to really inform the technology, the AI, with the information that you already have and question the system, write the reports, prepare applications based on the information that you already uploaded into the systems, and use this technology to really come up with practical solutions or great ideas so that you can go back and implement with your department or with your campuses. This was super helpful. And we invested a lot in helping understanding or spreading the awareness among our administrators. We did really organize some district level coordinated PDs where the administrators were given an opportunity to touch this technology. When it comes to using in the instruction, we did survey our schools and students, staff, and parents to understand what level of understanding do they have about the use of AI and what level of use we have in the field. And quite frankly, there are some interesting results that we just witnessed. Some uh, teachers, instructors are heavily using it. Some have no idea what is really going on. We also saw students are just basically being honest and sometimes being afraid to speak, truly, and it just reflects on their responses too. And that all just give me one idea. One thing that we really need to emphasize to solve this problem, we need to bring a transparent conversation. We need to ask everyone to be open, to be very frank, and to be very transparent in how we really use personally this technology and what we want our students, how we want our students to use this technology. So we are kind of putting together as a plan this summertime with our PD planning and everything to talk with our teachers very frankly, very openly, how they can make use of this technology, how they can touch this technology, and then how they can really expect students to use this technology. If we don't do this, there is a big risk, which I am very much concerned. It will be a very much disservice to our students because if our teachers do not adapt and understand the power of this technology, they may just score a student work as if it's a proficient work where there is no learning behind. There is nothing even. So, uh, and there might be even times where students can easily submit any difficult task without putting any effort or without even understanding anything in the concept. So it is the responsibility of the instructors and administrators that we should never get our students to find such easy or shortcut ways. And if we don't really educate ourselves and if we don't get ourselves trained enough, unfortunately, we will provide platforms for students to take those routes. So that's an ethical obligation and which we are pretty much focusing on right now. And that is also an instructionally an important responsibility on us that we need to adjust our grading policies. We need to adjust our policy and procedures in terms of how we want them, the students, to use the AI and related technologies. And we also need to be clear how we make use of the AI. If a teacher uses AI to score students' assignments to give an individual feedback, let the students understand this and let the students even know that there will be some technology that the teacher will be getting and taking advantage of providing individual feedbacks. And that feedback is to help support the students' learning process. So these are all ongoing conversations. And I don't know exactly, of course, what is the right and a clear formula down the road, but I know that we are going to do the best to find our way to make sure that we implement AI policies very near future.
Jason, can you speak to your perspective on the
Yeah.
transparency that Nihat mentioned on the college level? And also, let's talk about the tutoring, right? Because personalized learning is sort of the great promise. And I want to get your perspective and then circle back to Nihat to see if they're testing any Khanmigo-like things. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I love Nihat's ideas about transparency and also purpose-driven pedagogy. I think that's key too. So one of the things that really happened when everyone was using this technology was there really were these two camps, right? Camp number one was 100% resisting, right? Just not really looking at it, not even playing with it, not even doing any sort of dive into it. And then the other camp was chasing every single shiny object. Right? Every single thing that popped up, AI was in every assessment, every lecture, everything. And one of the things I think that's starting to happen now is we're moving past those camps, right? And so for me, the big question is, does this use, right, whatever use we're thinking of AI, help the learning experience? Does it actually help our students out? And that's one of the questions that I give to basically everyone, because one of the things that we need to do, if that is the case, is, as Nihat mentioned, being transparent with it. I think that one of the things that really happened at the higher ed level is that many professors were using AI and not talking about it. Right? Weren't really being transparent with it, but we were expecting students to be transparent about it. And depending on who you listen to, that works okay, that seems fine. Or for me, that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I feel a little bit better with just having things out in the open because that gives students a model, right, for actually using this technology in a responsible way and being transparent about it. And that's where I think a lot of educators are going. And I think that that's been one of the big kind of undercurrents of change. It hasn't really bubbled into the surface yet. We haven't really seen these big changes in a very visible way. But I do think the cultures, right, the college cultures around this technology are changing. And part of that too is, and I'll kind of do this as a transition to your question, Jim, about personalized learning, right? That is one of the promises, as you mentioned, of this technology. So my college uses Canvas. At some point, we don't know when, Conmigo is going to be there. It's going to pop in there, right? They Instructure and Khan Academy have an agreement, and they already have these things that they're rolling out. And then eventually, and I think the goal was sometime in the fall to start it in a beta form, have Conmigo actually in there. Now, I don't know if we're going to get direct access to it or not, what that's going to look like. But more and more students as going forward, I think, are going to use personalized tutors. Now, I also think, and please feel free to push against me, that the focus on personalized learning is a little bit concerning. It actually falls short of it. It actually worries me a little bit. I get it. I think that it is empowering in a very real way, and it is a very good way of tutoring. But one of the things that isn't really talked about is what happens after that. What happens when learning is personalized? And this conversation is happening at the college level already, right? Trying to figure out, say, Conmigo pops into Canvas or whatever. What does that mean for the learning community? We're very invested, and a lot of schools are, in learning community and trying to figure out how to bridge that gap, right? Because hyper-personalized learning is great and promising and interesting and empowered by this technology. It can also be extremely isolating, right? So for me, if I used a personalized tutor, 15 minutes tops, right? I get exhausted. I actually find it extremely draining. All of those cool demos that we have with Conmigo and everything else, I actually have a little bit worries about what happens when we give that to students, right? And Conmigo's actually been criticized for this. So Dan Meyer's criticism, which I'll just throw out there, was that actually this might not work for about 95% of learners. And Sal Khan's response was, yeah, you're probably right. Right. I can send you the interview with that. Right. Actually, it might not work. It might work very, very well for the top level learners, students who are, getting through the traditional system and doing very, very well and are self-driven and all these things, but might not work for all of our learners. And so what do we do with that? Right. What do we do if, say, a student isn't engaged by a computer screen and a virtual tutor actually, even if it's as hyper personalized as possible, even if that's not engaging to them, what do you do? What support system can you then create around that student? Even Sal Khan has said this, that something like Conmigo will not work for a lot of students. And then it's the school's job to do the rest, right? To have that surrounding support. So that's a big question. That's something that we're trying to deal with too, right? That you can send a student to a tutor. It doesn't mean that tutor, even if they're the greatest tutor in the world, it works for that individual student. So trying to figure out how to have, community of practice, community of learning, whatever you want to call it, right? Depending on your context, while we also have these hyper-personalizing chatbots. So that's one of the big questions out there. And I don't know anyone who's really grappled with it in a very direct and concrete way, but right now I think it's just a question that we're dealing with.
That's a great point, and I'd like to put that link in the show notes. Frankly, it's something I've been saying for a long time about motivation, right, and compliance. Right, kids on screens are going to get distracted. It's invariable, right,
Yeah.
and they're going to find a workaround. So from the MOOCs until now, right, it's follow through and commitment, and it's maybe there's some format in the future where it's really a teacher going around the room and they're each sort of monitoring and helping as a Conmigo or tutor, AI tutor is doing short bursts of help. I don't know. I just thought of that, but I was alarmed by that number. I didn't know it was that high, but
Yeah.
now that I think about it, it certainly can be. And that's sort of, troubling, but anyway, time will tell.
Yeah, I think what's important really at any level, and certainly I'll speak to my level too, that we're thinking about this technology in a larger ecosystem of learning. That it is not just like we're going to hyper personalize everything and awesome, all the problems of learning and education have been solved. It's not going to work that way, right? It is going to be a tapestry of these different learning and teaching methods. And it's always going to be that way. I don't think there's ever going to be, and this is what worries me about how some of this technology is presented. There's not going to be that single solution, right? We know that. We say that there is no one size fits all, but then we look at those demos and we see a technology being offered as a one size fits all solution. And I think that we need to push against that and say, well, there are ways to put that in context, and maybe it works for this and not this, right? And then questions about, how much direct, so when a lot of us watched that Conmigo presentation, right? That demo, when it's actually Sal Khan's son talking to the program, it was mind-blowing, right? And then at a certain point, right, and I watched that video probably like 10 times, you start to think about, but how much directing is Sal Khan actually doing, right? It actually points when he redirects the tutor because it messes up, right? And the son doesn't know how to redirect it, so Sal Khan does, right? These little things in the background. And so trying to figure out, like, how student ready are some of these programs? And even Sal Khan said, we'll have that program in a year and a half. Right? Like, we're not that close to it, right? It's actually way down the line. So yeah, and trying to think about larger ecosystems of learning and trying to figure out how it all fits together, right? I never bought into things like, oh, lectures don't work. I think lectures do work in the right context for the right reason, right? In a small spurt, right? There are all these different ways that we can connect it with other things. And I think the same thing is going to be the case when we have these virtual tutors, right? Saying that we need to be very, very purposeful about how we're using it, when we are using it, and why we are using it. And I think that's always going to be the case going forward as this advances.
Great. Nihat, I want to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot to discuss about these issues, but I want to just start with emphasizing where the personalized learning really fits in educational system. First of all, personalized education is not a new concept. It has been around, if I'm not wrong, since 2016. And there are still some effective websites and different platforms that they do provide very sophisticated tools for students to learn. But what we have observed throughout these years that this is not really an ideal learning method for every learners. There are students that they truly benefit from personalized education, self-motivated students, and students that they already have certain backgrounds and certain understanding of certain topics beforehand, and they can excel. But there are also student groups that they need one-on-one attention, and there are students that they are in need of a little bit more deep diving explanations and, lots of different needs. And it was proven that the personalized education not is a one solution that fits for all. And when it comes to AI, we should just understand what really AI is. It's a tool. It's maybe a more advanced tool than many other tools that we know right now. It's an impressive tool that really just surprised all of us, when we just really touched it, and get our hands into this. We realize this is super powerful, but let's not forget all technology and all the innovative ideas are just tools, and they have certain impacts on our students' education and on in the learning process, but they should not be taken more than what the credit that they deserve. So education is a complex context. It requires an instructor. It requires a right method and approach. It requires understanding of the student needs and finding what really fits the best. And technology can be a super powerful tool to meet those needs. So I do see, on the other hand, one maybe an application area which probably down the road we will be seeing in our classrooms. The personalized education platforms that we knew before, they had lots of issues and concerns in terms of communicating truly and directly with the instructor, giving the feedback to the teachers where the students' failures are. And personalized tools were more relied on the students to use at home rather than in the classrooms. With the AI and with these new technologies, we can maybe bring that personalized experience into the classroom. And if these platforms can truly provide direct and immediate feedback to instructor in the classroom, where the instructor then can navigate and even find out what exactly needs to be done to particular students, we may see some very strong and impactful, practices in our classrooms. So I do not want to undermine the power of the AI, and I do not really want to just even compare Khan Mingo and all other platforms with the previous technologies. These are super powerful technologies. I don't think we are yet to understand how we really make the best use of this, but we should also not really over credit for them. Just they are going to replace our instructors and they are going to change the educational platform totally. So we will find the balance, but we have a lot to grow and learn.
For sure. And Nihat, is there any schools that you benchmark? I'm just curious in the charter school system around the country, around the world, or is there any school that stands out?
No, that first of all, we do not really use these personalized education platforms in the past, and there are still discussions around what is the right software, what is the right AI for us to really purchase and start implementing in the classroom. So I can't say that we are there yet, but there is definitely something down the road we are going to implement, and we will agree and we will, adapt into our programs. However, I do know there are certain charter schools in the past that they came with a very big promise that they are going to use this personalized instructional strategies and specific platforms to help students. Unfortunately, some of them had big failures because, just like I said, that formula does not fit for all learners, and they just learned through hard lessons. On the other hand, I did participate in national conferences where I saw an amazing instructors really using these personalized tools in their classrooms, but that fits in that learning environment. So I came to understand even currently now, this is still a great method and there are still great tools that is applicable, but it is clear that it does not fit for every learners or every classrooms. And in charter school sectors, it's no different. Some good practices, some failure practices out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And of course, it always depends on the instructor or a teacher, right? How do they leverage it effectively, productively?
And parents, don't forget the
Oh my
parents
God,
too.
and parents too. You're right. Oh my God, that's right. They have to be part of that equation, and so it's a change management issue, right? You're really changing culture, and that
100%.
takes a long time, unfortunately. Jason, go ahead. Talk to us about your AI journey and comment on what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, one of the things, Nihat, that I love about your answer is the focus on balance. One of the things I think is so key is that, yes, we need to use this technology, play with it to the point that we get a sense of, even if it's going to change, how this technology can be used, right? How personalized learning can be powered by this technology. And then one of the things I kind of say to people is use it enough, right? And Ethan Mollick puts out 10 hours, but there's all differences in terms of what that point is. But use it enough that you start to think of use cases. And I actually think use it to the point that it no longer feels like magic to you. I think a lot of us, we use this technology, and for the first few hours, certainly first few days, it feels so magical. It feels like you put something in, you get something awesome out, and you go on your merry way. But then you hit that point when you do it enough, and it no longer feels that way anymore. And I actually think that's good. I actually want many of us to get there because then we're really ready to look past the technology. Because if we're really using this technology to help our students out, the focus needs to be on our students, right? It needs to be focused on the learning experience for them because there are a lot of uses of this technology that just uses it because it's there, uses it because it's the shiny thing that everyone's using right now. And so I think that we need to get to a point where we feel like we can look past it. And this isn't, what educators do, right? As we get more and more tools, we try to figure out how to use it in service of the student, right? And not just to use tech for tech's sake or AI for AI's sake. And so I think that that's really important, Nihat. And I think that that is something that we see at the college level too. I think every level of education is trying to figure out how to get that dynamic. And one of the things that I think is true today, I might have to revise this as I go forward, is that AI has changed a lot, right? AI has changed a lot about the way we interact with information, the way we interact with technology, the way we make meaning, all of that stuff. but I don't think it's changed the principles of good teaching. Think that those are pretty solid, right? As you mentioned, personalized learning is great. It's far from new, right? Experiential learning, far from new, right? Project-based learning, far from new, right? These are things we've had in our toolbox for a really, really, really long time. And my sincere hope with the technology with AI is that it is a push to go back to those, right? I've never actually seen on my level, at the college level, so much conversation and reflection about how we teach certain things, right? And whether we should be teaching certain things, right? Really existential questions. Like, if I'm giving something that an AI can do easily, right? Should I be giving that as an assignment, or should I revisit things? I've never really seen that question throw out as nearly as much as I have over the last couple of years, right? And I think that's a good thing, that this technology, I hope, will get us to rethink how we've been doing things for a while, right? Regardless of what happens with the technology and how it evolves and changes as it goes along, that this is something that is really, really helpful for college education. Because I sincerely believe there's a lot of things that were happening that really shouldn't have been happening, right? Because they're not good learning experiences, they're not good ways of teaching and learning. And that's kind of where I am too, right? So in terms of my overall journey with AI in education, I've gone through a lot of these different ups and downs. It's been very emotional. I was very worried about AI. I was terrified by generative AI the first time I saw it. I played with ChatGPT. I was disappointed. I was angry. I was upset, right? I had all these really, really strong negative emotions. So much so that I put the technology aside, went back to it, tried to think about it as a learner. And from there, my mentality started to change a little bit. And then I started to, really see how this technology could be used. So I've gone through all these emotional things. And the emotional journey I'm on right now is assessment. That's my current project. So I haven't really put off thinking about this, but I just needed some time to really play with this technology a little bit more, see how it can be used. And now I'm starting to rethink how I assess my students, what kind of projects I have them doing. And so I'm playing now and in the fall with all these different ways to actually give my students agency in what they create, right? I no longer think, or actually, I never really thought that we should just teach essays all the time. That is the standard, right? If you are a writing teacher, you just teach essay after essay after essay after essay. And now this has really been a push for me to think about whether that's the right way forward, right? Or if there are other ways. And I have, portfolio projects I'm playing with and project-based learning practices I'm doing and things like that. So that's kind of where I am, trying to figure out what this means for the future of assessment. And that's been emotional too, as I go through and I try to figure out what's working and what's not working, and talk to my students as much as I possibly can too, because I want their voices to be represented in a very real and consistent way.
Yeah, no, that's great. So much going on, so much still to change, right? This has been a really great conversation. We usually end with a just one thing sort of prompt. So what's one tip for educators who want to integrate generative AI into the classroom? Let's start with you, Nihat.
Well, just like I said, I think the first and foremost, the educators must be very transparent of how they make use of the AI and how they want to educate students in their classrooms to use the AI. They need to really have a transparent conversation. I think that's very important. And my advice to students and anyone who did not really to this technology, touch to this technology. It's super exciting. It's super impressive. And I think it has so much that we don't even recognize yet, which will help shape the world in the near future and even down the road, the maybe totally different world that we will be living. So it's an important technology, cannot be ignored, but we need a transparent conversation.
Thank you, Jason.
Mine's going to be similar. Being transparent and being open. I was talking a few weeks ago with a college student who had interviewed hundreds of college students about AI. And he would have the interview, he talked to them, asked them how they're using it. And he told me 70% of the time, the student would ask them to not publish the video, not mention their name in the interview, right? They were worried that the college was going to find out. I think that it is important to recognize how
Yeah.
rebellious at the college level transparency and openness are right now. So first step, I would say, just talk, right? It's so easy. Talk to students, right?
And
Talk
it
to
all
other
started with
faculty members.
OpenAI. It started
Yeah,
with
right.
OpenAI. So the
Yeah,
name is even OpenAI.
right.
All right. What about
Yeah.
one tip for young people who are seeking to learn more about generative AI?
I was just going to say, pick a model, play with it. Don't overcomplicate it. Just dive in, pick a low stakes thing, play with it, see what happens, experiment, innovate, go from there.
Exactly. And I just said, like, touch your hands. This is a super powerful technology. And without touching, uh, you can't really understand the real true power of it. So play with it and you will enjoy. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. That was amazing. This has been a great conversation. We usually end with a poem or a saying or a quote. So let's start with you. Let's start with you, Nihat. Go ahead.
Well, I have this quote that I really truly admire. It's from Steve Jobs. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. So that is one of the driving philosophy that I have, and I try to implement this in all aspect of my decision-making process.
Great. Great stuff. All right, Jason, go ahead.
So I'm going to pull back in time and I'm going to give a few lines from a poem, which is about disruption, even though it's usually not talked about. So this is from Second Coming by W.B. Yeats. All right. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, right? This is actually in many ways about disruption, what happens with it. The blood-dimmed time is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. And these to me are the huge lines for AI and what's happening right now. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. One of the things I give this poem and talk about it is that in an age of disruption, first of all, don't focus on the disruptor, focus on what people are doing. Focus on the humans, focus on how they're dealing with it and who is talking, right? Don't necessarily just listen to the person who grabs the mic. Listen to as many people as you possibly can. One of the things that happens in a disruption, the people who are sometimes don't really have a grasp of this technology are the most passionate about it or talking the most. So be skeptical, right? And listen to as many people as you can and be human-centered.
That's great. Wonderful way to end. Thank you both so much. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.